Hello everybody, thanks for checking out your host APubDod here, GC of this room. Today supplement in A, I will base little does A, and seeing this good that we've got so long a Neurotrope about and Blade of these two great energy because they both work in the rising up buff category. Blade of the Guardian only rises up on the agent and Neurotrope hits the team. You do want the Neurotrope, you really don't want to pass this up or potentially wait for a spinner. Drop your gold now and get this item if you don't have it, because nothing in the game does this. You have things that approach it, but this is a brilliant package. You could use it for rising up heroes. You can use it with the Blade of the Guardian. You can use it for the counterattacks, which have a chance of spreading your level 1. And your counterattacks will AoE if they are AoE counter people like Shitterstar and Gorgon. And the Epiphany, you can get that from Pesty, but Epiphany says the next attack is guaranteed to be a critical hit, which is pretty nice. The Blade of the Guardian tanks and it counters, which is dangerous with Hafe. But you get Rising Up, and when you get all of the Rising Up buffs, which is Fortified, Focused, Agile, and Strengthened, you, like Herc, get the Blessing of Heroes, where you take a Terracing Boost style heal, and your stats are really jacked up. It's melee and it's slashing as poor PvP bonus, but it is one of the best slashing swords in the entire game, and it is very good if you need rising up buffs, as this could passively grant them to you. Along with the Neurotrope and 1 or 2 Blade of the Guardian swipes, you could have all the things that you need. So, apparently, the Horsemen suits are on sale. You'll notice you didn't see them from me because I own them. I got them when they came out. But let's discuss the 4 that come into this and, discuss their pros and cons. Well, Iceman is the first one up, and much like Archangel at one point, he is the Horseman of Death. He comes in Bruiser and Blaster forms, both of which are very good for your PvP bonuses. He shares Bruiser with his vanilla suit, and he gains Blaster. He is pretty solid. He has this AoE disabled with a good chance of a stun. He has a chance to counter by popping people with the snowballs. He has Freezes Over, which does Exhausted, which is good for the Blaster version. It helps shut down Tacticians. And you have Ninth Circle, which is Doom and Despair. Really good with Gamora and Resurrection teams and everything like that. He is a pretty solid character, but he is perhaps one of the weakest overall because he was broken for such a long time. But he does have a res, and he has, see that Death and Taxes, has a chance to attack when an enemy with chilled attacks or is attacked. The weather control device can do that for you. He had some good synergy with Storm, he has some good synergy with Gamora, and things like that. And he also has that nice little res. He's probably 4th place. Slightly up from him is Horsemen of War, and kind of either way on this one. There's like the good 2 and the lesser 2. All of them are good, and you should drop your money to get them. That's my belief. But for Horseman, if you want the quick lock, quick null types of bonuses, quick lord, get the Blaster version. Here for Horseman of War, she comes in Bruiser and Scrapper, both of which are really solid. Scrapper is, of course, great for single targeting with any of these abilities and then following up with the Snicket. Her opener almost all the time is Blades of Rage. It's adamantium. She hemorrhages, she puts a stack of bleed, but 2 stacks of ravages, and 2 stacks of pains. This is a great opener because everybody gets 1 stack of bleeds, it's stronger, and it immediately hemorrhages. It also sets her up for Made for Walking, which when you use this ability, this is like a shower of yellow, damaging, crit-riddled fucking pain. You get hit by Made for Walking, you feel it in the cockles of the bowels of your body when you see that move get used. It is really, really strong, and it's a very deadly ability when somebody has 2 or 3 stacks of bleeds, and even gets some pressure points. Snicket is also really solid as it shreds, which says bleeder immune people now count for bleeding. She does Ravaged on this, she does Pain on this, and she also does Blind Rage, similar to the Mangle ISO for Wolverine. And that is that you can't use buff or defensive abilities, which is the Cube, Light Fantastic, the Warm Zephyr, the Custom MFG, you know, anything that heals, everything like that. Ah, the Kefka music. Remember that Kefka fight when you were young and that yellowy thing is coming out of the ground and you're like, oh my god, look at all the faces. This thing is crazy. So, Iceman and X-23 are probably the lowest two. The top two are Rogue and Pesty. Rogue is falling down a little bit. Famine Rogue here. Well, Rogue, period, she's falling down a little bit. But Famine is kind of falling because Classy Rogue has sort of overshadowed her a little bit. She also has a big problem with the Hugin's Eye. Now, 2 of her abilities are unarmed melee, 2 are not. But the 2 that aren't have cooldowns. So if you were trying to run around the Hugin's Eye, you would eventually have a round where she couldn't act. Otherwise, she would miss. Black Horse is always the opener when she is on defense. When Rogue is on defense, she always uses the level 9. Which kind of negates her ISO that says she already starts within the fray. Good on offense, dirt shit-ass fucking poor on defense. Absolutely worthless ISO on defense. Don't slot it. She uses this anyway. It's a retarded ISO. It's a waste of the slot. She has the Brawl, which really can get to hit hard. Absorb Power, which has a pretty good chance of the stun. Don't let the 35% fool you. And Drain Essence, which is a really big self-heal that is only hurt by Despair. Her scarcity, you know, this is still a very good ult, and if you don't have any of the Horsemen ones, get it. Do not touch the Blaster version. Just pretend this doesn't even exist. That it doesn't exist. Skip right past that. Now, Classy Rogue is sort of taking the cake because Classy Rogue can eventually get so many abilities that she turns into a one-man wrecking machine. Our boy Pesty, does he need an introduction? He is the single most unique character in the game. Hurting group bosses, hurting enemies, hurting your own team. But there's ways around it. He does what the signpost does, but dot reduction helps. Miss Marvel making you unexploitable. Captain America with his unexploitable, and then the Agent. Very, very popular from the day he was released. He's starting to fall down a bit in the face of Team Kulf, as they really hurt him, but he just changes the whole landscape when he's out there on the field. He had very good synergy with Satana when he dropped, but still Infiltrators were not that welcome at the time. Pretty decent synergy with Spiral, and a lot of your magic users, like him and Nico, were a force to be reckoned with. I used him very effectively with Captain Steve Rogers on offense for a while, and then he shifted over to being buddies with Red Hulk because of sealing in the bomb. He basically says, I am going to make sure your debuffs don't go, and if you want to exploit them, I will give you that opportunity. So he worked with like Pym and Wasp. Phenomenal synergy with Anti-Venom. That's a very scary thing to see on the field. Him and Fandral is very scary because of those instant 3-stack of bleeds and the potential D-power that you can't get rid of. His Infiltrator one is something to be respected. You don't want to get popped by that Heart of Darkness and then get nanoplagued with it. Very good character. Definitely get at least one of them. I would probably say the Tactician over the Infiltrator, but Infiltrator Pesty is very strong. Do not bother with his ISO that says if he doesn't act physically, he heals. It's stupid. It's a minor heal. You're better off applying like Sting on the Infiltrator version or the Mirror Images for the Tactician. Savant is really the go-to one for him. Jekyll and Hyde is used quite often, and he is very good for attrition exploiting, and that makes him pretty good with, of course, that bitch tits. The Enchantress over here. Him and Enchantress was the scariest thing for me last season. I hated seeing pesty chanty teams. Absolutely hated them. My sphincter clenched every single time. Especially if he was an infiltrator too. But yeah, so he has a lot of applications out there. The best of which are the bleeds. He often gets used with Gamora, which is not quite as good as you think. You're like, oh, I totally see why he goes with Gamora. Well, think about it. Despair is bordered. You can't remove it. Doom hurts you if you remove it. So what's the point? The only thing that's really good is it seals in Gamora's bleeds. And with Despair and the inability to remove a debuff, you're gonna die. Despair says you can't heal through it. He says you can't remove it. It spells a slow death for you until you take him out. But Gamora is not the best pairing for him to smarter people. I think bleeders and other attrition people, like Nico was phenomenal with him. Because, you know, he could set it up with more dots and then rock and roll. He's good with the cube, with improbability field, and then Atom Smasher. He had some synergy with Pepsi Can if you were doing radiation exploitation, but his big buddy now, we know, is Red Hulk, but Enchantress is really rising up through the ranks and approaching that. So let's take a look at this Hadron Collider, and I can tell you that this thing is a beast, and the biggest beast part of it is with the ground people. It has a lot of very, very good synergy with your ground people. Now, the Agent does not have a lot of ground items, so Captain Britain here has got a really solid ground attack, but more on that. One of the only ground items that the Agent can get is the pneumatic sledge, and I think something called the Sorceress Scepter. That has a ground attack also, but that's very rarely seen. So for this fight, I'm going to go with the magnetism exploitation. I do know that Victor is a infiltrator in the face of scrappers, but we'll definitely try to take care of that. And then we will move on to the ground abilities. So none of these items, or none of these actions on this set are quick action unless you're running snappy service, so keep that in mind. At this point, I'm just going to protect myself because they both go before I do. So we know the enemy team is now magnetized, the bruiser suit protected, and I get the extra turn, which is great. So I'm going to make sure I shut down these scrappers. And I'm not going to use the ground attacks on this one. So the first item here is sort of like smartest man in the room. And it builds. It starts with super symmetry, which says your attacks always hit and ignore most avoidance. It then tacks on always crit. It then tacks on ignores defense. But that's 1 round, 2 round, 3 rounds. You have to build up towards it. But honestly, 2 of them is really good. Because it's, yeah, 2 of these is a very good thing. I'm going to use Cosmic Singularity on this one. And you can see that's pretty solid damage, and that is because the enemy team is already magnetized from Magneto's passive. And when I cast it, magnetized people take damage. That's that reverse polarity. So you can see here, everybody is magnetized. I can't use it again because it's a 1 round cooldown. So at this point, I will go ahead and apply the micro-analysis. Thanks to the free turn. Over here with Magneto, we know this exploits magnetism. Pretty solid damage there. And we know this will critically hit magnetized targets. Reasonable damage, considering it's the counter class. For these guys, we can open up with the magnetized from him, because we don't have to worry about the follow-ups. So now these guys are downgraded, they have the static charge. So now, I didn't protect, but I'm going to go ahead and again hit the Cosmic Singularity. There's a pretty beefy crit. There's the reverse polarity because they're magnetized. So you can see right here, we have built a very good magnetized team out of these two. And we've tied it all together and gotten the agent on the deal because of the Hadron Collider. So now what I could do here is, if it fell off, well, okay, so their supersymmetry is still on. It doesn't show up because it's a blue, so you don't see like a 1 here. Now if we take a look at Victor, we will notice he's now moved on up to Planck particles. I ignore avoidance, and I critically hit, which was going to happen anyway, but hey, why not? 2.2k, not too bad for an un-ISO'd character. So now, I'm going to go ahead and move over to the next style that we can do with this guy, and that is the ground attacks. So there you can see, Kurth was calling us obese again. Ah, fat, I'm just big bone. So let's get vision, blah blah blah, rewards. I hate this section of the soundtrack over here because for some reason the audio quality just gets really scratchy and just loud. It seemed to have been recorded way too loudly. Alright, so let's go ahead and take on this medium threat over here. And let's get the grounders in here. And I'm going to switch to my tactician suit so I can make that #1 option a quick action, which will allow me to ramp up through the SMITR type buffs over there. Basically for free. Nope. Nope, where are you? See, you know, these stupid icons. I mean, it'll stand out when I see it. It'll have the ice. Oh, is it going to be right here, maybe? Nope. So there's our nice little Christmas toy that still doesn't work yet. We get our crappy bonuses, but we don't get a working item. So we're going to leave the pneumatic sledge in there. He's going to come all the way over to Gorgon. I'm going to have Victor back up, and we will pick up Avalanche. So now we have built ourselves a really nice little ground team over here. And thanks to the tactician suit running snappy service, we could use that #1 item as a quick action, which really gives the device a lot of replay ability there. It gives it a lot of worth. So I'm going to go ahead and smack that scrapper and get my bonuses. Alright, so we get to use this as a quick action, so let's apply it to the team. And the fun really kicks in on the next level. So I'm going to go ahead and hold on to this until after Avalanche runs. For now, I'm going to make the bleed. I'm going to give him frosty bleeds. Hopefully that Goliath stays away from Avalanche. Alright, so we're going to generalize the enemy team, which is one of Tampon Man's best abilities. And I'm going to pop that Bruiser. So now we see the sky is falling over there. And we're going to have Gorgon AoE the team. So that Scrapper is just about gone, but now the sky is going to fall twice. Well, it should have fallen twice. Alright, so we will use this as a quick action. And this is where this gets really interesting for this team up. As we know, ground attacks don't crit. That's their thing. They always hit, but they don't crit. They will miss flyers without the erupting. But when we come up to Planck particles, ground attacks do crit. So here we go. We're going to use this ground attack and watch what'll happen. Well, that's white. That's odd. It'll work with Avalanche. And there's the... Okay, so there's the Aftershock. That is that attack that happens before the enemy acts. So we know this is a ground attack, okay? Well, actually, you know what? Let's set her up with the flank. So there's the Super Shear Earthquake. And look at that. It's... I've used this once before, and the screen really shook when I got that earthquake out. Really, really shook. Alright, so here, classified as a ground attack. And if we look at the buffs, we see attacks always critically hit thanks to the Planck particles. Watch what's going to happen. Critical hit. Ground attacks aren't supposed to do that, and they do now when you get to that second level of buff. So you, right here, just saw a potential meta offensive team. I do not recommend this device for defense because everything only has a 1-round cooldown. Your agent may accidentally spam away on something you don't want him to. If you set up, say, Gorgon and Avalanche to be your defense, you don't necessarily know that you're going to spam the Aftershock, which is really the way to go for that. So this is a good item for offense. The value goes up with Snappy Service, but it's very, very dangerous for D. And I wouldn't use it on D, but you get to see it in action. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed looking at the item. And maybe it'll help you out in whether or not you want to buy it. So take care, everybody. Thanks for watching this follow-up or supplement to the week in MAA.